Welcome into Sports Memos Betting Podcast, college football, every game on the board, segment number 2 with Mid-Major Matt. Mid-Major Matt, welcome to the pod. How are you?
Doing well, Drew. A fascinating card, and we're going to be talking about during this thing one of the most fascinating games I've ever seen on the college football card coming up a little bit later on.
Fascinating game you've ever seen. I can't wait for that, Mid-Major Matt. So we're breaking down 131, 132 down to the Fresno State game. If you're following at home, that is 163, 164. So a bunch of games on segment number 2. Then we'll have Robbie Vino in, and then Teddy Covers to finish off the college football every game on the board podcast. So we're going right down the line here. 131, 132 down to 163, 164. And at the end, we will have a special segment of FCS football games, which Mid-Major Matt also is a better in. We got 9 a.m. Pacific kick here, 12 noon Eastern. ECU, the Pirates, at UConn, the Huskies. We got 66.5 the total here, Matt. 14 in the hook. That's what ECU is laying in stores.
Well, let me tell you, we don't know how bad UConn is, but I'm never going to lay this many points with East Carolina because they're not very good either. You look at them, they've lost 5 straight games. They have not shown a lot of propensity for a lot of offense. You look, Darius Penix, the running back's been out since game 2. They've been trying to replace that, and he hasn't been good. They have a guy, Cortez Heron, who is also part of their offensive line. He's been out since game 4. Coach Houston talked about in the post-game press conference last week, 2 weeks ago when they played, that he really enjoyed their run game and he wants to get back to the run game. But then again, you got UConn. Steven Krajewski, who's one of their quarterbacks, he's been cleared to practice and to play. He's been out since late September. There's no word on where he'll be in the depth chart or anything like that. But look, none of these guys are very good. Defensive end Kevon Jones has been suspended for the final 2 games. He was 5th in tackles, 3rd in sacks. I mean, UConn's playing out the string right now. They've shown me absolutely nothing since that Umass game that it says that they're going to cover anything. But are you really going to lay 2 touchdowns with a terrible team in ECU either? This one's a complete pass.
What about the over? Both. If there is a plus for UConn that I have noticed in the past, Mid-Major Matt, is their quarterback's sort of mobile. He can throw it. They throw it down the field a pretty good percentage amount of the time. In ECU, it's a team I haven't really bet all year long. But looking at their past scores, they can score the football as well. 66.5. Do you think that's reachable?
It's reachable, but then again, you also have, for as good as they were at UMass, where they scored 56 points, the games around it, they scored 3-10, 17, and 7. So, ECU's defense isn't good, but not. So this is one of those cases where the defenses aren't good, but the offenses aren't very good either. I know ECU has scored a ton of points as of late, but SMU's defense has proven faulty. Cincinnati, who knows what's going on with them? So if you had to play anything, I'd lean to the over. But as we talk about on this part of the podcast, there's a ton of games, and you could simply pass this game over, especially at noon.
All right, Matt, good start there. On to the next one, BYU at UMass. Talking about the UMass men here, Matt. It's always a fascinating handicap. I don't think they are the worst. I think Akron is the worst, but bottom 3 team in Division I football, FBS, excuse me. We got 40 in the hook. That's what BYU is laying on the road here. 69 the total, Matt.
So BYU's been pretty good lately. I've watched the last couple games. I was very impressed with them against Liberty 2 weeks ago in a game that saw a Liberty team that we figure was going to get outclassed play pretty close to BYU. They kind of know who their quarterback is right now. Zach Wilson, it looks like it's going to be atop the depth chart because Romney's dealing with a foot injury. Jaron Hall's had the concussion problem. If you want to take a look at this, maybe look at the first half. Joe Critchlow is their backup quarterback, most likely at BYU. He's the 4th string guy. And they may look to get him in, especially since Zach Wilson's not 100% healthy, and they've got the road trip to San Diego State coming up next week. So maybe a look at BYU. We also don't know about their running back, Lupini Katoa, who's dealing with a concussion, and their wide receiver, Aliva Hefo, who had a freak accident, which is what the coach referred to it as, a freak accident in the pregame warm-up. So we don't know about either of these 2 guys' status. Here's a stat for you. UMass has changed quarterbacks in games 6 times this season. Only 3 times they've played the same quarterback from start to finish. They don't know who's going to play under center. They're absolutely hideous. It's their last game of the year. I think these kids just want to go home. So maybe look at BYU in the first half, and that way you're not depending upon a 3rd or 4th string quarterback and a bunch of backups to try and get the cover there.
Yeah, I like where you're going with that. And you bring up the UMass quarterbacks. One of their quarterbacks, Matt, is like 5'8". Have you seen that?
I think it's the Brito kid, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Randall West is quite the opposite. He's a big lefty. He's actually athletic looking, but like nobody can run this offense very well. So yeah, it's first half or nothing here for me.
All right, good stuff, Matt. We got Temple at Cincinnati up next. Looks like 10 in the hook. That's what the Bearcats are laying at home. 45 the total in Hibbert.
Temple's a very good team. I don't understand this constant fascination for Vegas to undersell Temple. You go back, you look, they were a 6-point underdog against Tulane. It actually opened at 4.5 and went up to 6. People wanted to bet against them. Temple has been a very live dog at home. They go down to USF. They were only a slight favorite or a slight dog in that one, depending upon when you got the number. USF is terrible. Granted, they were an underdog against UCF, and that was, of course, the reason why. They had that little brief blip on the radar where they couldn't stop SMU or UCF. They played Maryland and beat them back when Maryland was good. So I don't understand this underrating of Temple all year long, but I think I want to take advantage of it. Look at Cincinnati the past couple weeks. They beat USF 20-17 on the road. USF can't run it, can't stop anybody, and can't do much on offense, and they nearly lost that game. Go back a couple more weeks. They almost lost at East Carolina 46-43. Giving up 43 points to East Carolina, that's not very good either. The Ritter kid, they seem to think that he is not 100%, the quarterback for Cincinnati. His mobility has given Temple fits in the past, but then again, Temple's also dominated this series. I don't know if this is a trap line, but this is, I think, one of my favorite plays in this section is taking Temple plus the points because they've got the better defense. They've got a better offense. Russo, when he's on, is really good. Centeo has come in and given them a different look at quarterback every 3 or 4 drives. So I think Temple may actually be the better team in this game, and you're getting a bunch of points in a situation where I think they could actually win outright.
Cincinnati's defense is pretty good. I'll give them that, Matt, but I'm with you. I mean, Cincinnati of late has not been very good. Temple has been underrated, and you brought up SMU and UCF, and it did get away from them. But Cincinnati, athletically speaking, on the offensive side, isn't to UCF and SMU's playmaker potential. So it doesn't scare me as much there. I'm with you. I think Temple's the side, man.
Right. Warren's a really good running back, but if you stack the box against him and force Ritter to beat you, then they're kind of stuck a little bit. And I just, Temple, look, they're very capable of laying an egg in this game. But if you look the last couple of times they've met, Temple beat them in overtime 24-17 last year. 2 years ago, Temple beat them in Cincinnati as a 2-point dog, 35-24. I just think it's a good matchup. I think Temple will try and grind the game out with Ramon Davis now that he's healthy. They've got a solid group of backs, and I think that they can, Temple's got a lot to play for. If they win and then they beat UConn the last game and Cincinnati loses to Memphis, then Temple represents the East in the AAC championship game. So there's still a lot to play for.
Interesting. Okay, good stuff, man. We got TCU at Oklahoma up next. 65 the total. Sooners laying 18 points in Norman.
So this is the classic case of what's Oklahoma's mindset like after last game? I mean, they came back. They got the win. They should have the momentum on their side, but we don't know about CeeDee Lamb. He's a big part of that offense. They got away with it against Baylor because I'm not a big believer in Baylor's defense. They won't have Grant Calcaterra for this game. They've already ruled him out for Saturday. Oklahoma's clearly the better team, but I don't know what their motivation is. I don't know what their head's at. Of course, they got to win to keep getting themselves in the playoff positioning and things like that and keep looking good in front of the committee. On the TCU side, they're going to be without cornerback Jeff Gladney for the first half due to targeting. Well, you need all your corners when you face Oklahoma. Then his place, they got 2 first-year guys who are going to play. The freshman linebacker this week, Jacoby Simpson, entered the transfer portal. He's like the 3rd or 4th guy to enter the transfer portal in the middle of the season. Now, granted, he only played special teams for 7 games, but that's still telling me something like, why are these kids transferring mid-season? It's not like TCU's that bad. I consider maybe – I actually don't know where to go in this one because if you could tell me Oklahoma's focused, they win this game rather easily. But if they're still thinking about last week, maybe TCU hangs around a little bit.
Matt, next game up, heading to the Sun Belt, we got Troy versus Louisiana Lafayette. The Raging Cajuns laying 14 at home, 70.5 being the total here, Matt.
I feel like every game in conference in the Sun Belt goes over. I mean, like these numbers are insane. There's a ton of 70s in these games and high 60s. But if you look, Troy's last couple games, 63-27, 49-28, 36-35, 52-33. Like these numbers probably aren't high enough. Troy will have one of their offensive linemen back, Kirk Kelly. He's missed the last 2 games. But this is a Troy team that's not in the usual situation. They're not playing for a Sun Belt a berth in the Sun Belt championship game. They have. I don't even think they control their own destiny. I think they need a ton of help if they're even going to make it. Lafayette, we know what they want to do. They want to run it. They got that group of backs that is just absolutely incredible. They will get back a key cornerback, a senior. He missed last week. He is a really key piece. If you read a lot of the articles, they're very happy about having him back. But they are not going to be without Zion Hill, who's a defensive lineman. He's doubtful. The starting right tackle is up in the air, his status, because he's missed the last 3 games with a groin injury. Lafayette at home's not a bad bet here. They just want to run it. But Troy, they've got a really good offense. The over might be worth a look here, or probably nothing in this one.
Heading to your neck of the woods, mid-major, Matt. Liberty at Virginia. We got 54.5 being the total. Looks like Virginia laying 17 in Charlottesville.
So here it is. This is it. This is, to me, the most fascinating game of the card all weekend because there's so many things to consider here. First off, we'll take the Liberty side. Liberty needs one more win for bowl eligibility because they beat 2 FCS teams. They're coming off a bye week, but this is also their 4th straight road game. They want to go and they want to beat up on the big brother of the place. And we've seen their offense. Look, Stephen Calvert, Antonio Gandy Golden. It's one of the best combos in America. But their defense isn't ready enough for a UVA team yet because we've seen them struggle against BYU. They don't have the speed. They don't have the size yet to match up with these Power 5 schools. Go all the way back to week 1. They got shut out by Syracuse. Now, granted, it wasn't a great Syracuse team, but they're not ready for Power 5 action yet. But, Drew, this is the most important thing. Virginia's got Virginia Tech next. If Virginia Tech beats Pittsburgh, it's for the Coastal Championship in Charlottesville on Saturday. They've got a long losing streak to their rival Hokies. They need all hands on deck. Guys like Joe Reed, who 2 weeks ago, they took away kick returning duties because they wanted him just to play wide receiver. Hassis Dubois is a little banged up. We know Bryce Perkins has been dinged up a little bit throughout the season. The fascinating thing is, how much does UVA play their starters? Will they play at all? And if they get out to a lead, when will that lead come? Will it be quick? Will it be a first quarter, second quarter thing? I'd tell you to take the first half, but if it's, there's just so many variables to this matchup here. The over's worth a look because I think Liberty will score some points. But if Virginia keeps their whole defense in the whole game, maybe not. Their secondary is ridiculously banged up right now. They've lost like 5 or 6 corners and safeties for the season. So you figure Calvert should be able to do whatever he wants, but once again, who knows who's going to be healthy, Drew? So, there's so many factors to consider. Bronco Mendenhall laughed when someone asked him this week, will you sit guys? He said, no, we got to play every game. We got to play like we're going to win. That's his public face. What's he saying behind closed doors? Is Bryce Perkins going to sit it all? So, the angle here clearly is Liberty, but if Virginia plays their starters all game long, they're way better than the Flames.
So talent-wise, you think that there's that big of a step up from Virginia to Liberty? Because I don't know. Watching Virginia, man, they kind of show up sometimes, not others. It's not really like Bronco Mendenhall. The teams that I've seen him coach in the past, I've kind of been burned on Virginia a couple times. And to tell you the truth, Matt, I don't do that well looking back at my past records with, Power 5 teams going up against Group of 5 teams where there is a talent disparity, but yet the motivation is there. I just think it's a very difficult handicap. Do you usually get involved with these type of games?
Well, I would normally get involved with this one because, as you said, it's my neck of the woods, and this is a matchup that I know a lot more about. Ironically, actually, today I talked to Buckshot Calvert, had him on my radio show, did an interview with him. So he's a guy that I kind of got to know a little bit more and talk to him about his season. The step up in class here for Liberty, they lose 24-0 to Syracuse. They gave 44 points to Rutgers. How many weeks does it take a Rutgers team to score 44 points over a normal season? So, they let Rutgers move up and down the field on them. But as I said, is Virginia going to go with a run-heavy game plan? Is it going to be Wayne Talapapa a lot so they keep the stuff down on Bryce Perkins? But if you're going to just do a lot of run heaviness, then play Brennan Armstrong, the backup quarterback, let him get some reps. It's just there's so many variables here. They need all hands on deck because, as we know, Tech is really hot right now. And if they beat Pitt, they're going to be really confident going into Charlottesville on Saturday. In some ways, this is honestly the worst possible game that Virginia could have before the big rivalry game.
And Matt, we're talking with mid-major Matt here at ESPN Richmond, Matt, right? And what time's your show on?
3 to 4 Eastern time. And today we talked to Buckshot Calvert. And he talked about actually the thing, because over his career, he's been an FCS guy who was in an FCS conference, went FCS independent. Now he's FBS independent, but still had an FCS heavy schedule. This is like the first year that they've actually had an FBS heavy schedule. And he's talked about, like, the fact is you could tell the speed, the size, the ability of the players that they're playing on a constant trek here. Like, he's noticing the difference here. Now, he's had a really good season, but I'm just saying, look at the games where they've taken this step up, and you've noticed the defense isn't fast enough. The offense has struggled a bit at times. So if I was to say anything, if without anything else, I would consider Liberty plus the points, because I think Virginia's mind will be on next Saturday. But if Bronco Mendenhall uses this as some sort of warm-up game for the Virginia Tech contest, and they try really hard, then I'd consider Virginia in the first half. So, like, you see the angles here that there are in this game.
Did you ask him anything about his first name being Buckshot?
Okay, so Buckshot is actually his middle name. His first name's Steven. His father gave him the nickname Buckshot as his middle. It's actually his middle name. And when I called him before the interview to set everything up, he answered the phone Buckshot, and so that's his middle name, and that's what was given to him by his father. And he told the story. I forget completely what it was, but he knew that his son was going to play football, and he wanted to have a name like this to stand out from everybody else.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. That's a good one. Also, whenever, not necessarily with him, but whenever you're interviewing college football players or NFL players, do you ever get the sense that they know what the point spread is, or do you ever just plain ask them about the point spread?
I don't know if the college kids do. I definitely think the NFL players do. I mean, I haven't really asked them as much, because you always ask them about, like, hey, so-and-so is disrespecting you. Like, hey, ESPN picked against you. Like, oh, yeah, we know that sort of stuff. So, like, if they're watching NFL, ESPN, and NFL Network all the time, and with all the point spreads that are up there, they have to know. College, maybe. College Game Day is starting to do spreads more, bad beats on SVP, Sports Center. So, like, I think some of them are savvy enough. It's kind of like the kids who know bracketology and spend a lot of time on that in February, whereas the other kids are like, yeah, I don't care. I just want to play.
Good stuff. Mid-Major Matt. And guys, check him out at sportsmemo.com. The coupon code MMM29 gives you his 3-day all access at sportsmemo.com. Every play he releases in every sport. Now's the time to be getting on the all access packages at sportsmemo.com, because it is college basketball going. Mid-Major Matt's off to a pretty good start in college hoops, knows it very well, college football as well, and NFL, using the coupon code MMM29. That's 3 M's, then numbers 2 and 9, just 29. Under $30 for his 3-day all access pass, less than $10 a day. MMM29 at checkout. Illinois at Iowa up next, Matt. 15.5. That's what the Hawkeyes are laying in Iowa City. 46.5 the total here, Matt.
So we all liked Iowa when they played Minnesota, because we thought that Minnesota was going to be hungover after their win against Penn State. So the question is Iowa going to be hungover after their big win over Minnesota? They're home, and it's Senior Day. Senior Day is always a weird thing, and I don't know what you do with regards to Senior Day, if you consider it all, how many seniors there are, how emotional it could get. The good news for Iowa is Brandon Smith was back at practice this week, and he is a big-time difference maker for this team. Another one of their corners, Michael Alajmudia, was also back at practice today. And I also wonder, did the bye week hurt Illinois' momentum? They've won 4 straight games. They're bowl eligible. They were playing great, and now they have a bye week, and you wonder if maybe the momentum breaks up a little bit. I don't know. So I'm not touching this game. As I said, usually the Big Ten's not my specialty. I'll just give you the information I know that I would consider. But how do you handicap Senior Day? Do you throw that in there at all?
Yeah, if it's a senior-laden team, I do. I also, researching these games like Baylor. It's Baylor's Senior Day, and was talking about that on the videos today, Matt. In Baylor, hearing the quotes from Matt Rule, tough. The seniors are in it. That type of stuff. I think it does matter, because nobody wants to lose their last game, at home in front of their home crowd of their whole college career. So I do factor it in those, but in terms of teams that have kind of quit on the season, like a New Mexico Lobos team, I wouldn't put too much into their Senior Day.
Yeah, certainly. If it's like Umass, it's their Senior Day. I mean, like, I think like the guys will be ready for the seniors to graduate. So yeah, it makes a difference. I'm just saying more like, Iowa coming off a huge win, Illinois with the bye week stuff. Like, there's some things to consider for this one. But Brandon Smith coming back's huge. Iowa's offense needs that dynamic piece, and certainly Smith is part of that whole thing.
All right, Matt. Moving down the card here, I was actually researching what the rivalry was called, but we're staying in the Big Ten. Purdue at Wisconsin, 48 being the total, 24 in the hook. That's what Wisconsin is laying in Camp Randall.
I feel like the Big Ten more than any other well, okay. The Big Ten and the MAC are the two conferences. Like every game they're playing for something. It's like a blade of grass, a bucket of gum, a stick of gum, a dynamite, whatever. So I'm sure you're right. There's probably some sort of name for this game. On the Purdue side, look, it's been a lost season. They've gone through 15,000 quarterbacks. They've lost everybody to injury. Although Jeff Brom was quoted as saying when asked about Rondell Moore, quote, "I'm as hopeful as you that he may play this week." We'll see. I was Googling it this morning because that quote was from Monday. I hadn't seen anything regarding Rondell Moore practicing. Lorenzo Neal's another guy who they're hoping to get back to practice this week. But Wisconsin just beats up on bad teams. Wisconsin doesn't take any pity on you for what they do. Wisconsin's not going to have a defensive tackle, Bryson Williams, for the second straight game, but they are going to get back a true freshman corner who's played some things. Wisconsin just has a lot to they just steamroll bad opponents at home. And so, I would lean to Wisconsin in this one, but this is a no play here.
My favorite one, Matt, is the Old Oaken Bucket.
That's Minnesota and Michigan?
No, good guess. Indiana and Purdue.
Oh, wow. Yeah, and it's probably an Old Oaken Bucket with, a hole in it probably.
Yeah, no, some of these are great in the Big Ten. The Land Grant Trophy, Michigan State, Penn State. We got the Freedom Trophy, Nebraska and Wisconsin. Old Brass Spittin', that's Indiana and Michigan State.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, but that Old Oaken Bucket, that's a good one there, Matt. But we'll continue down the list here. We got Kansas at Iowa State in the Big 12. Cyclones, 24.5 in Ames, 58.5 the total here, Matt.
I almost took Kansas last week, and then I remembered it was Kansas because, this is not your daddy's Kansas. They actually are playing better, but now it's kind of – they had that brief stretch where they started figuring things out. They came off the bye week. They had the new offensive coordinator scored 48 against Texas. Now, granted, it was a loss, but they scored 48. Then they scored 37 when Texas Tech pulled a Kansas at the end of the game and had an awful play. Since then, Kansas scored 10 against Kansas State, had the bye week, scored 13 against Oklahoma State. I feel like that whole momentum thing is kind of petered out on that side. Puka Williams is good. Carter Stanley, a quarterback, is not terrible. On the Iowa State side, look, there's a lot for them still to play for. They've got to be feeling good after that win over Texas last week. I like Brock Purdy, the quarterback. They've got a safety, Greg Ilsworth, who's been playing through a ton of injuries. He's got a shoulder injury that he's been playing with through September. It's a big number for a reason. I would look at the over if you believe that Kansas can rekindle the offense because their defense is not stopping anybody. Iowa State could score 40 or 30-something. And if you think Kansas can carry the load a little bit even, then the over is probably worth a look here.
Matt, interesting handicap up next. Minnesota off the loss. Are they bounce back at Northwestern? We're seeing 13 or 13.5 mostly. That's the Golden Gophers laying on the road. 39.5 the total here, Matt.
Oh, I thought the 13 was the total for this game, considering it's involving Nebraska, Northwestern. So this week, Pat Fitzgerald actually was asked about the quarterback production and kind of got fed up a little bit. Here's some stats for you. First off, Hunter Johnson could be done for the season. Northwestern is dead last in passer rating, 80.2. The next team below them is 10 or 11 points above them. They average 4.3 yards per passing attempt. That's ridiculous. Oklahoma, I believe they said, averages 15 yards per passing attempt. Northwestern averages 4.3. We don't know who's going to be quarterback. Tanner Morgan is uncertain. He had a concussion last game. Zach Anixstad would have been the backup, but he's been out with the foot injury. You've got Jacob Clark or Cole Kramer who could get start, but they're also freshmen. And I was reading about how PJ Fleck is trying to balance them with regards to the whole freshman rule in terms of playing them 4 games and allowing them to continue to redshirt. There's just a lot of question marks here. It feels like a sleepy situation. Now, it's hard to back Northwestern. They scored 45 points last week, but it took them a lot to get 45 points on Massachusetts. And so it's more of what you believe in. Do you believe Minnesota's going to be hung over? If so, take Northwestern. Do you think Minnesota's defense won't be hung over? If so, maybe you consider the under. Do you think Northwestern can muster up some offense? That's another reason why you would take Northwestern, because I can't lay that many points on the road with Minnesota, because if they're angry or if they're sad and hungover after losing last week, are you going to really trust them to go into a sleepy atmosphere at Northwestern and play motivated?
No, it's a question mark for sure, but I mean, they still have everything in front of them in terms of like the Big Ten championship. The biggest bowl of that I can ever remember Minnesota being in is still reachable. So going up against the Northwestern team that outside of UMass has really done nothing, I kind of see this number as a little short, mid-major Matt.
I mean, it could be, and it's certainly. If you believe that Minnesota won't be hungover, then yeah, I believe that you should take Minnesota because Northwestern can't score on anybody. But it's just the whole thing of PJ Fleck has done such a good job with this team, and they got all this smoke blown up their rear ends, and then all of a sudden they lose that game, and it's like, okay, he's got to get them and tell them that they do have a lot still to play for, that they can get in the Rose Bowl, that they can get in some of this other stuff. But I don't know if he can or not, and that's my big question. That's why I wouldn't take Minnesota, me personally, but I could see why you would do it because you believe that they're going to be highly motivated still.
Next two games up, mid-major Matt, heading to the Pac-12 for two teams that got their still alive for the national championship here. First one up, Oregon at Arizona State. We're seeing the Ducks laying 14 in Tempe, 52.5 the total, Matt.
So Oregon's got a lot of injury issues, especially at wide receiver. Micah Pittman broke his arm against Arizona. He's going to be out for the regular season. Juwan Johnson's been hurt twice. They've had guys defect. They've had other guys get banged up. Yet Oregon keeps rolling it along because, they've got Justin Herbert. So, he's really good. Arizona State, they've got a pair of guys on the defensive line who are not going to play, George Lee and Shannon Foreman. Joey Yellen, the backup quarterback, it was back in pads in practice. They don't know if he's going to be ready yet, but this is one of those games where you almost feel like Herm Edwards has a little bit of magic left in that thing because the big rivalry games next week, of course, Oregon State from the Oregon angle, they're like, oh God, we got to play Oregon State again. Although it is not a terrible Oregon State team this year. I just feel like Arizona State's got one last thing in them. The only thing is Jaden Daniels running out of steam a little bit because he is a freshman. This is past how he would have played in high school. Is our team starting to figure him out? Are some of these close losses catching up to them? They lost by 1 last week at Oregon State. They lost by 5 to USC at home a couple weeks. They lost by 10 at UCLA. Are they starting to continue to play well? Are they really happy right now? Are they, one or two? Are they thinking we're 1 or 2 plays away and we're really good? Or are they thinking we're 1 or 2 plays away? How are we going to screw this game up? So Arizona State at home, big atmosphere, big game. Oregon has to win. They have to impress the committee. Still, I think there's a chance that Arizona State makes things interesting on Saturday.
And the other one here in the Pac-12, Utah at Arizona, 57 the total here, Matt. 22 in the hook. That's what the Utes are laying on the highway.
We talk about dominance in college football as of late. We've talked about Clemson, how good they've been. We've talked about LSU. Look at what Utah's done the last month and a half. 52-7, 21-3, 35-0. There was the Washington game where they came back and won. And then after the bye week, 49-3 over UCLA. This defense has been ridiculous lately. They're getting an offense with the Moss kid, the Huntley. They're really good. It's hard to get in front of Utah right now. Arizona, the big question is, who is going to be the quarterback? Is it going to be Gunnell? They started Gunnell last week, and then Tate came in. And, so how are they going to rotate the 2 quarterbacks? But Arizona's offensive line, they played without 3 linemen last week, including 2 starters from the opening day. Looks like all 3 of those guys are doubtful. Another guy got hurt in the last game, and this is the wrong opponent to be able to have an offensive line issues because Utah's defense is ridiculous. I actually think the under might be worth a look. If you think Utah's defense is going to travel and Arizona's not going to score a lot and Khalil Tate may not play a lot, I think the under might be worth a look, and you just hope Utah doesn't get it all themselves.
Yeah, Utah, there's been 4 games this season. Utah hasn't let up a touchdown. That defense is something else, like you said, Matt. I think the Utes overall are an underrated team. I have them circled on as a one-way team, and that's bet on. Heading to the Sun Belt up next, Matt. South Alabama at Georgia State. We're seeing the Panthers -10 at home, 55.5 the total.
I'm done with South Alabama, although they did cover for me against Texas State. I had that as a free play in arguably the worst game in college football. And 2 weeks ago, I had them cover at Texas State because for some reason Texas State was a touchdown favorite. Texas State shouldn't be a touchdown favorite over anybody, but South Alabama, not very good. I mean, they've lost a ton of games. Their only win this year was at home against Jackson State, 37-14. The big question for me is who's going to be under center for Georgia State? I don't know if you noticed. Last week, Dan Ellington, the stud quarterback for Georgia State, played through a torn ACL.
Mm-hmm.
He played with a torn ACL. They're not going to win the Sun Belt, but more wins for Georgia State gives them the all-time school record for wins in a season. There was talk of him continuing to play on the torn ACL. There was talk of taking him out and having him end his season. That's a really big thing for me because Georgia State's offense is not as good without Ellington under center. They've got a bunch of guys on defense who are hurt right now. So I would wait on this game. See if Ellington's under center. I think Ellington playing is a big boost for this whole team. They see this kid who's not getting paid right now. He's playing through a torn ACL. They're not going to win the Sun Belt, but I feel like they're getting some juice from him playing. So if you find out Friday or Saturday that he's playing, then I'd probably play them because South Alabama is atrocious.
Yeah, and the backup is a freshman. I believe he just completed his first pass 2 games ago. So it is a big difference there at the quarterback position for Georgia State. Heading to the Pac-12. Next, Matt, we got Washington at Colorado. Buffs catching 14 in Boulder, 52.5 the total, Matt.
First off, these two teams need to be better about giving out the injuries. I didn't read anything I do a Google search on both these teams. I couldn't find very much. But Washington coming off the bye week, they have a lot of questions. The Eason kid has gotten a lot. So reading in some of the previews and things, there are a lot of people who are not sure about Jacob Eason as quarterback. I think he's been all right. I think there was a lot of expectations considering where he came from and considering when you look before the season, they had some starters back, but there were a lot of question marks still with this Washington offense. Colorado, they beat Sanford in their homecoming game 16-13, and then they had a bye. If they were playing right afterwards, I would have thought they would have laid an egg here because of how, they won that game. This offense doesn't do a lot. Washington's defense is really good. I know it's like a hold your nose type of thing to take unders in the Pac-12, but if Colorado's defense can just play a little bit, I think Washington will keep Colorado out of the end zone for the most part. Maybe it's like a, 30-13 type game. If Colorado gets 2 touchdowns, I'd be very impressed. So I'd consider the under in this one.
Matt, we got Texas State, the Bobcats at App State here in the Sun Belt. We got the Mountaineers laying 29 in the Hook and Boone, 51 the total.
App State's really good. And App State's playing for that Group of 5 New Year's Day Bowl. They have to win. They have to win big. And they've won, last week they went to Georgia State and they won 56-27. And this team has had a couple of shaky performances. Yeah, they won at South Carolina. But then before that, they lost that game to Georgia Southern. Before that, they played a tight game somewhat against South Alabama. App State needs style points. They need sexy points. They need to win this game. They should win this game rather big. The Twyford kid for Texas State was hurt. He's banged up. It depends on who's quarterback at Texas State. If the Jensen kid's playing, he is a guy that makes a little bit of a difference. Tyler Vitt is terrible. I think App State wins this game big. I may consider App State first half. And then I would consider App State game because they have to get style points if they want to go on to New Year's Day.
Boston College at Notre Dame up next. The Irish laying 19 in South Bend, 64 the total here, Matt.
Notre Dame. So fun stat, BC's the 7th team this season that Notre Dame is facing off a bye week. Makes a difference.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. If you look at, I love as part of my Phil Steele magazine, he always talks about who's coming off a bye. They have played Boston College, Navy, Duke, Virginia Tech, USC, Bowling Green, and New Mexico all off their bye weeks. And that makes a difference. When you have 2 weeks to prepare for this team, Ian Book's been a little shaky at times. They looked really good. I mean, I was stunned at how much they beat Navy by last week. I know a lot of people liked Navy, and I know a lot of people liked the over there. 52-20 was a very impressive win by Notre Dame. They've got the road game against Stanford next week. Notre Dame's a little banged up on defense. Shane Simon done for the year. There's a couple of guys who are status are up in the air. Braden Lenzy, the wide receiver, safety Kyle Hamilton, Javon McKinney is for Notre Dame. There's a lot of questions about this defense for Notre Dame. Boston College is going to come in and run it with the Bailey kid, with the Dillon kid. They're going to want to try and grind it out and play bully ball with Notre Dame. I think that's their only way of keeping it close in this one because remember, the Anthony Brown has been out for a while for Boston College. So if Boston College can accomplish playing bully ball against Notre Dame, a front seven that's banged up a lot, then they should be able to cover this number. That's the big question. I don't know if they can. Certainly, they don't. I don't think they could stop Notre Dame if they played like they did last week against Navy.
One game left here on the Every Game on the Board podcast. Also a special section up next. Quick rundown of the FCS games with Matt. Check them out at sportsmemo.com or on Twitter at midmajormatt at sportsmemo.com. We got the 3-day all-access pass. You'll get every play in every sport that Matt releases using the coupon code MMM29 for the 3-day All Access Pass at sportsmemo.com gives it to you for less than $10 a day, just $29 using coupon code MMM29 at checkout. We got Nevada, Fresno State in the Mountain West, 50.5 being the total. Fresno State laying 14 in the Valley, Matt.
Fresno State might be one of the most banged up teams in the country. 8 players done for the season, 8 others in the 2 deep who have missed one game at some point. Freshman wide receiver Jalen Cropper, who is 6th in receiving yards and also has been used as a rusher at times. They could be without him. 2 offensive linemen went down last week. Their status is being evaluated throughout the week, something to look at as we go along during the week. Fresno State has lost 2 straight, 3 of their last 4. 2 of those came at home against Colorado State and Utah State. Nevada actually has some momentum, but then they had the bye week. They won at San Diego State 17-13. They beat New Mexico 21-10. The bye week, once again, could kill the momentum here. I don't love giving out Nevada as the team here, but when they're playing better football, and you've got a Fresno State team who's ridiculously banged up, they've got all these injuries in all sorts of areas. I don't hate Nevada here, especially above 2 touchdowns. If you can get the hook, and if it goes up even, maybe there's some sort of Fresno State steam for some reason. I don't know why there would be, but Nevada's playing better football right now. Fresno State's really banged up in certain places. They're really inconsistent. The home field advantage isn't that great. Nevada might be worth a look in that one.
All right, Matt, let's get to the FCS games. What are we talking here? Like the Sanfords and Auburns of the world, or FCS versus FCS?
No. We're doing the 5 games involving the FCS and the FBS. Look, none of them are going to win outright. We know that. But you should at least have some information, know some things, who they played in FBS before, what's their record, what kind of style do they play, and could they, present some sort of issues for their opponent. Western Carolina. Do you want to do you have the lines in front of you?
I do. They're only at one sports book right now, and it's an offshore sports book that I to tell you the truth, I don't like to say the name on the podcast just because I've personally had trouble with this sports books, and I've heard other people having trouble with this sports book, but there is lines out there. So yeah, seeing it around and guys, coming to game day, on Saturday, there will be lines out on these games, possibly even on Friday at most books market wide. We're seeing 57 as the total, 57 is what Alabama is laying, 61 being the total in this game. So it will be in that area come Friday or Saturday.
The irony is it actually opened up, I think, at 67. And I thought that was crazy. And it got bet down because what's Alabama's motivation here? Like, how long do they play Mac Jones without Tua? And they're going to go through the motions. They're going to score probably every drive in the first half. Western Carolina's 3-8. They lost to NC State back on September 7th, 41-0. They've won 2 of their last 3. Last year, they lost at UNC 49-26. I don't expect them to put up much of a fight. But the question is, how long are the starters going to play for Alabama? So maybe you look at Alabama first quarter, first half, and then you maybe hold your nose and take a shot with the Catamounts, hoping they're going to score. But they're not a good FCS team. But what's Alabama's motivation after what happened to Tua, not to bubble wrap all their superstars and kind of just get in and get out for a game like this?
Yeah, there is questions. I don't know. They got the Iron Bowl on deck, and it looks to be a competitively priced Iron Bowl, Matt, seeing the numbers come out just at 1 right now. So are you looking to bet this game?
I want to see what the numbers come out as when they come out more consistently, as you say, because sometimes different books have different numbers when they release them. They kind of see what happens with the one book, and then they make their own adjustments. I'd consider Alabama first quarter, and then I would potentially hold my nose and say take Western Carolina for the game, hope they get a field goal, hope they get 6 points, hope they stumble into a touchdown. Because after last week, Nick Saban may not play any of his studs whatsoever in this one.
Yeah, good point there. We got Sanford at Auburn. This one a 9 a.m. Pacific kick. That would be 11 a.m. local time. 64 being the total. 48.5 War Eagle laying in Jordan-Hare.
Bulldogs are 5-6 in this season. They've played 10 total overtimes this season. They've played a 4, a 3, I think a couple 2s and a 1. They beat Wofford and the Citadel, who are ranked teams, but they also got crushed at Furman 58-14. Once again, this is another one of those situations. The Tua thing could hang over a bunch of these teams. Like, there's still a lot for Auburn to play for. They've got the Iron Bowl next week. Does Bo Nix play more than a half? This is another one of those games where maybe you consider Auburn for the half. Maybe you consider the over, because Sanford can actually put up some points. Their defense isn't going to do very much in this one, but maybe you look at the over and Sanford contributes to this one as Auburn just gets in and gets out and gets ready for the Iron Bowl.
Tennessee Martin at Kentucky up next. Wildcats laying 29 in the hook, 43.5 being the total.
UT Martin is 7-4 in the season. They lost to Florida at Florida 45-0 back on September 7th. They're actually 1-2 versus FCS top 25 teams. 7 teams have scored 20 points or more. 7 times they've scored 20 points or more this season. They can actually put up some points here. Their defense isn't very good. Kentucky's offense still working, although the Lynn Bowden thing's getting a little bit better. This one could be an over if you think that Kentucky's going to get to 30, because I think Tennessee Martin could score a couple touchdowns. Once again, Kentucky's got Louisville next week. They've got bigger fish to fry. I think that the over might be worth a look in this one, depending upon what the number is moving out to everybody else.
Matt, next up, we got Mercer. UNC got 39. That's what the Tar Heels are laying in Chapel Hill, 64.5 the total.
The Bears are 4-7. They won their first 2 games of the season. They are 0-2 against the FCS top 25, and last year they lost to Memphis 66-14. North Carolina's got their rivalry game against NC State, but with all the close games, this feels like one of those flex your muscles types of games for UNC. I'd consider UNC first quarter, UNC first half, and UNC game. This feels like with everything that they've gone through, like they need to get out their frustrations with all these close games, and they probably pound Mercer to bits. If you get the first quarter and the first half, but you don't cover the game, you at least come out on top depending upon how much you wager in this one. So maybe look to jump on the heels early and then kind of put a sprinkle on the game, and then hope that they cover early on and you win those 2 bets.
Just sprinkle it. We got Abilene Christian at Mississippi State up next, 57 being the total, 37. That's what the Bulldogs are laying in Starkville, Matt.
Wildcats are 5-6. They lost week 1 to North Texas 51-31. 6 times this year they've scored 24 points or more. Mississippi State, I mean, I haven't paid too much attention to Mississippi State, but if they're an offense that can score a lot, this one might be an over, because Abilene Christian could be able to put some points up. I'm guessing the Egg Bowl is up next week with regards to this. And by the way, let me correct one thing. I actually read my notes wrong. Tennessee Martin has held 7 teams to 20 points or less. Now, I still think that means that Kentucky's going to be able to score because they got to work some things out. Lynn Bowden at quarterback and everything. Don't love the over as much there because I misread my notes. So go back to that. But Abilene Christian, Mississippi State, now that's an over to potentially consider, because once again, Mississippi State may play well in the first half. They may start playing some backups. And Abilene Christian, the Wildcats, could take advantage of it and score a bunch of points themselves. So that's the over, not the Kentucky-Tennessee Martin game.
All right, Abilene Christian, Mississippi State, looking towards the over. Should be in the high 50s come Friday. So check it out, guys. If you're looking to get into little degenerate specials here, FCS, FBS football on Saturday. Mid-Major Matt, always a great time having you on the podcast. We got the coupon code MMM29 for his 3-day all access. Will include any FCS games he releases. Matt, anything else you want to throw out before we shut this down?
No, it's great. The only thing I would also consider, and we talked about it last week, the freshman thing. There are teams that have played for their freshmen 4 games already, so they're suddenly going to disappear if they want to keep their red shirt. Whereas there are other teams who have played their freshmen 2 or 3 games. They're going to insert them in. So, just try and read up a little bit on any game you do and any freshmen that may or may not play, because that may slightly affect your handicap depending upon what position they play.
All right, Matt, great stuff. Best of luck with your bets. And guys, we'll be right back with Robbie Vino.